Showtime?
Showtime.
Okay.
So uh, I'll start just checking if the recording started. All right, welcome everyone. It is my distinct pleasure to introduce Dr. Michael Lawton, President and CEO of the prestigious Barrow Neurological Institute and holder of the Robert F. Spetzler Endowed Chair for Neurosciences. Dr. Lawton stands as one of the world's foremost authorities in cerebrovascular neurosurgery, having successfully treated over 5,000 brain aneurysms, 1,300 arteriovenous malformations, and 1,400 cavernous malformations throughout his career. Beyond his exceptional surgical expertise, Dr. Lawton has revolutionized neurosurgical education through innovative initiatives like the 7 Series, the Barrow Neurosurgery Base Camp, and Mission Brain, with over 100 chapters over 27 countries. With over 1,000 peer-reviewed publications, 8 textbooks, and the current leader of the NIH-funded Brain Vascular Malformation Consortium, Dr. Lawton seamlessly combines clinical excellence with groundbreaking research and making him not only a great leader, but a master surgeon in advancing the field of neurosurgery. Welcome, Dr. Lawton. Thank you for agreeing to talk to us.
Thanks for having me. And congratulations on the work that you guys are doing.
So Dr. Lawton, we want to start off. We want to know before, let's take a step back. Before the era of Dr. Lawton in neurosurgery, who was Mike Lawton? What was he like growing up, going through med school and training?
Well, let's see. Going through med school, I came to neurosurgery late in the game. I entered medical school wanting to be a heart surgeon. I went to undergraduate at Brown University and was an engineer. I was in college in the late 80s, and so back then the Jarvik 7 total artificial heart was all the rave, and Barney Clark had just gotten his first ever artificial heart, and I thought that was the future. That's what I wanted to do. I had seen a heart operation and watched the chest cage be open up, and saw the heart pounding in there, and that's what dragged me to medical school. And I thought my engineering plus that was going to be my life, and didn't work out that way. I got my first summer after my first year of medical school, they send us to the labs at Hopkins to do summer research projects, and I wanted to do a cardiac surgery project, and Dr. Reitz told me that the labs were full and he had nothing for me to do. So I desperately started searching for something else and found neurosurgery. There happened to be an article on the cover of Johns Hopkins magazine about spinal cord stimulators, and seemed like engineering as applied to medicine. So I signed up, and the rest is history. So to be honest, I mean, I came late. I was a student at Hopkins where brain tumors were a big deal. Henry Brem was the chairman, and so I got interested in brain tumor research and brain tumors generally. It wasn't until I came to the Barrow and saw Dr. Spetzler operate that I realized that brain tumors weren't going to cut it for me, and I needed something a little bit more exciting, and I switched to vascular.
Very interesting, Dr. Lawton. So one question before you completing your circle, going back to Phoenix, you went to UCSF to fill a void in the vascular surgery there. So my question is related. What are the key ingredients or components in building a successful open vascular program from the ground up? How do you maintain this innovation and excellence when stepping into the entirely new ecosystem like UCSF?
Well, that's a complicated question because in 1997, when I was given that job opportunity, the world was a different place, and just being there and doing high-end open vascular neurosurgery and doing quality work was enough to make you successful. Charlie Wilson was my predecessor. He turned over his vascular practice to me, and he really wasn't that interested in vascular neurosurgery at the time. So it was a void, as you said, and just by me going in there and having high interest level, I was able to find plenty of cases. I was doing 400 cases a year. They were all vascular cases by and large because our department was very subspecialized. And so the volume was easy. Now it's a different matter. You know, to get 400 vascular cases in a year is almost a pipe dream. And, you know, there's just, like, it's a completely different landscape. So I don't know that my formula for then is the same as my formula for now. I think, you know, I was cursed in that I did open vascular surgery early in my training and my career. And so once you've tasted the sweet nectar, you can't go back to anything else. And so endovascular never had the
Yeah.
appeal that it would for someone who, you know, starts off their medical journey doing both and trying or training in both. I think today the formula is to do both, to get open skills and also endovascular skills. I think this generation, your generation, the medical school mentors audience, you know, your generation is seeing both kind of side by side, and it's a lot easier to like endovascular in that context. But for someone who goes in 100% full bore open vascular to then train in endovascular and try and build that back into a career, it's not as easily accomplished. So that would be my formula, is just to go in, train on both sides, be fully engaged, and find a way to mesh with your local environment.
Excellent advice. Thank you.
Doctor, as a follow-up question, I would like to ask you about the growing fear that as we rely more on AI, we might weaken our ability to think critically, especially among students. In such a demanding field like neurosurgery, how do you think AI will impact clinical reasoning and surgical training, and how can we make sure we're using it to strengthen our thinking?
Excellent question. So I think that it's gotten real easy to use AI as a crutch. And I just got a notice today, in fact, that a paper that somebody had written where I was a co-author was accused of plagiarizing a lot of the paper. And I think that's, it's really easy these days for people to just like use AI and find shortcuts to the hard work of teaching or innovating or discovering. And yeah, as you say, you lose the ability to think critically. I think back in my era, thinking critically meant taking super complicated things like an AVM and finding a way to grade it so that you can make the right clinical decisions. And those were reductionist formulas, reductionist grades that were able to lead people to the right answers without AI. Nowadays, you can rely completely on AI for those same decision-making skills. And yeah, I think it's hard to maintain that. But you know, I grappled with that when I was writing my last book, the 7 Cavernomas book. And you know, Dr. Spetzler and I were talking about this, and he wanted to build a model that you would basically feed your MRI scan into, and it would generate for you a prescribed surgical approach, management plan, outcome prediction, all that stuff. And I thought, yeah, this is brilliant. Let's do this. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, why not develop a thinking man's system, a way to think your way through these same problems. And that's when I really started developing this taxonomy for cavernous malformations and teaching the different categorizations for lesions and the different approaches that pair up with those. That's a more educated approach to the problem. And I think it's you know, the answer. Like as long as there are people committed to adding some conceptual rigor to something that's very disordered or chaotic, and teaching that and showing how it's applicable and valuable, then I think hopefully your generation will accept that and start using it. And so, the answer lies with you guys. If you start talking about cavernous malformations as, brainstem cavernous malformations having the one of 16 different subtypes that I've laid out in my book, and using that nomenclature and using the approaches that go with that, then people will learn that. They'll want to know that. If your generation just reaches for your iPhone and asks for the approach, then people won't see the value in a taxonomy. So I think that's really the answer, is to embrace the technology, see where it leads, but then also don't sacrifice your intellectual activity, and be self-sufficient. I always like in the operating room when I'm doing a tough case to have my navigation, but to not need it. It's like a little test to know that if I need to find my way, I can look up at the screen. But if I'm better than that, if I can rely on my anatomical insights, then I shouldn't have to. And that's kind of how I like to play the game.
And do you think we should rely on personal rules in terms of ethics, and what we think it's the best decision in terms of the training, in terms of using neural navigation and so on? Do you think it should be a personal decision, or maybe a consent rule?
Well, I think everybody makes their own personal decisions. So yeah, ultimately it's a choice. And I think you're just a better, stronger surgeon if you are not dependent on extraneous technology. I make the analogy often that if you're trying to get to your destination in the woods and you're dropped off at a trailhead, you're far better off if you can read a map and know how to use a compass and can orienteer your way through the wilderness to your destination than you are if you're just, checking your all trails or your algorithm that's pointing you right or left. And at the end of the day, it's also a lot more satisfying if you have really oriented or orienteered your way through the wild, and you make it to your destination before sundown. That's a much more gratifying feeling as well. Same's true in the operating room. If you are trying, we did a brainstem cavernous malformation yesterday. It was on the top of the pons, and when you rely on all of your anatomical landmarks, like in this case, I knew that there was one limb of the superior cerebellar artery that was dipping down and laying on that upper belly of the pons, just at the pontomesencephalic sulcus. And that was the upper end of my lesion, and the bottom end was just below the level of the axilla of the trigeminal nerve. I knew exactly how to find that thing. And, the navigation wasn't necessary. I used it, I just checked myself one time during the case, but I had my own internal compass and didn't need the crutch.
It's great. Thank you.
Also, Dr. Lawton, you just mentioned your series of books, or your 7 series books. So I was wondering, in that books you use metaphors of war, architecture, and art. So where that creative aspects come from? How do you are able to manage a very complex case in these in these ideas?
Well, I think we're all creative, and we all try to find ways to communicate. I think the metaphors help that. They help me as a writer. If I can play a little game with myself and in my bypass book build a metaphor of architecture and blueprints and symbols and all that stuff, it's fun. It makes something that's otherwise a little bit painful and arduous into something that's kind of fun. And it also, as a reader, it gives us something to work with. Like, we play with those metaphors in designing the artwork and the layouts of the book. So it's fun. It adds an element of playfulness to the writing style that you don't see in most textbooks. So I use it as a teaching tool. But I also think we all, to be complete people, have to bring in all different sides of who we are. If we're all just rigid scientists and not artistic thinkers, then it gets a little bland. So I like to meld it all together.
That's true. Gets a little bit boring. Thank you.
Dr. Lawton, I would love to ask you a few more questions regarding your formation and your whole approach during your education and your training. You've shared before how you approached your career in 5-year plans. You first focused on technical on technique and becoming excellent technically, and then later growing as a leader and an educator. What drove you to set those goals from early on? And how do you think that mindset shaped your journey?
Well, I think the easy answer is boredom. You know, if you do something long enough and you don't change it up, you're going to get bored. At least those with active minds do. I think some people like routine and they like complete stability, but I'm not one of those. So whenever I feel myself getting a little bored and restless, I know it's time to change things up. So that's where the 5-year, it's actually 7-year plans come into play. I think a 7-year cycle is my circadian rhythm, and you know, it takes a while to hatch an idea and then to really push at it for a while and then reach that sort of cruise control or boredom stage, and that's sort of the merry-go-round that I found myself on. And you know, my learning curve technically was about 7 years, and my academic productivity cycle was about 7 years, and leadership, same story. So I think when you put that up against the arc of life, it's our lives are very short, and in order to cover all the ground that's worth covering, you got to keep changing it up. So that's part of the motivation. And you know, I not a young medical student anymore, so I see my years as being limited. So there's a lot more left out there to do. So I think it's a good idea to just keep going on to the next plan and seeing what else you can stir up.
See, and if you don't mind me asking, what is your current 7-year period focused on?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm still wrestling, but you know, I think I've got this B&I gig down pretty well. So things that are different are the global neurosurgical area is super interesting to me right now. We're trying to build a mind-brain institute here that focuses on things that are coming down the road in neurosurgery that aren't necessarily here yet. Our Neuralink Prime trial is a great example of that. We've done 6 patients. There's only one other institution in the world that's put one of these in. So we're the leader in this space, and it's incredibly transformative for patients. It's 6 patients, so it's not like I can say that it's changed the landscape of neurosurgery, but I think 10 years from now, it will. And so I'm really excited about getting positioned to lead that. And so that's super exciting to me. And then, you know, I'm not sure what else. There's a lot of things that I find intriguing. Medical journalism is super interesting, and you look at people like Sanjay Gupta or Huberman and others, and it's interesting how the world wants to know how the brain works, and we probably ought to be doing more to teach in that way.
Thank you.
So I think that's so awesome, Dr. Lawton. I know here at Med School Mentor, you know, we really want to help provide mentorship to a lot of people that come and watch these. And we know that you had such great mentorship, and in the past you've shared how, you know, being with Dr. Spetzler, he helped shape your growth inside and outside of the operating room through trust, through quiet discipline. So what would you say, if there is one, you know, was the most transformative lesson that he would have passed on to you beyond surgical technique, something that, you know, you have potentially carried with you?
Yeah. Well, I would probably say the greatest thing I learned from Dr. Spetzler was that there's more to life than neurosurgery. It's so easy to look at what we do and see it as the end all be all. And I'm guilty. I love what I do. I'm very single-minded in my profession. You know, I'm 28 years into practice and I still love what I do. So, I mean, I could be completely consumed by this, but I think I learned from him that there is more to life than just that. And he was always an outdoorsman, a really devoted family man, a real, what's the word? Someone who just challenges his limits, whether it's on a bike or a trail or whatever. And I think that's really important. I think your generation has a much better handle on work-life balance than we in my generation did. We worked 120-hour work weeks. We were on call 5 out of 7 days in some rotations, and we didn't think twice about it. And you know, I think your generation is much more balanced, and I think that's great. I think that was probably the lesson that I think meant the most, because you know, you get to the end of life and or in the later quarters or later thirds of life, and you just realize all of a sudden there's so much more that you need to get done outside that maybe hasn't been done yet. And you know, just speaking from recent experience, my trip to Africa I got back last week. I'd never been to Africa, and you know, I think that that's just a reflection of how you fall into your professional life, and you just get so consumed, and you realize that you don't always have the rest of your life to do these things. You got to find time right now to get it done.
Doctor, and as a follow-up question, one thing that stood out for me was that in your interview with Dr. Spetzler, you said how your relationship changed over time. And I would like to ask you about how was it to transition from a mentee to a colleague to a friend, and how did this transition change and impact your way of mentoring students nowadays?
Well, I think whenever you're a resident and you're being trained by a chairman, there's going to be a natural power gradient, age gradient, experience gradient. So it's definitely one of those things that's hard to overcome. Like I always looked up to Dr. Spetzler, and he always maintained a very rigid separation between himself and his residents. He would be the first to admit that he never let his hair down in front of residents. You know, I think that just made it harder to transition later. But I think now the culture is different. I like letting my hair down in front of residents. I took 2 residents to Africa with me, and we hang out, play cards, play dominoes, and do fun things together. And it's kind of nice. I mean, I feel like that's one of the perks of this generation, is that you don't have to have the gradients that were separating you before. You can have you can wash away the gradients and just be together. And it's fun, you know. I may be a better surgeon than my residents, but they're a lot cooler than I am. So you know, I get a lot from them too. And you know, we like to take residents here that are different. We took a resident who was a all-star lacrosse player. We took a resident who's a Navy SEAL, SEAL Team 6. We took a resident who's used to play professional baseball. So by eliminating those barriers and those gradients, then it gives you a chance as a faculty member and a mentor to actually hang out with your mentees and get something from them too.
And what about the hikes?
Oh, the hikes are still there. We do those. We do the Grand Canyon. We do the hike from hell through Oak Creek Canyon in Sedona. We do training hikes to get ready. So we do all that stuff, and we do softball. We do, you know, the kinds of things culturally that bring us together and make you feel like there aren't any gradients. And in fact, you know, those things are good for the residents. They may get to the operating room and feel very separated from their mentors by their level of experience, but you get on a baseball diamond together, and they're the ones that are leading the charge.
It's great. Thank you.
And Dr. Lawton, you mentioned how you mentioned a few of the of your perceptions of being a resident training under the chairman, under Dr. Spetzler. And I guess my question is, it's very easy to not see how time will pass, and you will get to that. I don't imagine that. Let me rephrase this. I apologize, but did it ever feel like you had large shoes to fill in following up Dr. Spetzler and then going to UCSF?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I almost didn't take the job because the shoes were so big, but you know, I think you just have to try and rise above that. I mean, I didn't feel as though I couldn't fill them. I just knew that it would be a challenge, and you know, people have high expectations when you step into a position like that. But you know, this is an opportunity that's too good to pass up. You know, the Barrow has an incredible tradition, this legacy of excellence, and these great neurosurgeons that have come through here, both as faculty and as fellows and as residents. And this place needed a leader, and I was happy to do it. And you know, yeah, sure, the shoes felt really big, but you know, I think as time goes by, you know, they just get comfortable, and you end up filling them.
So you just also started talking about your residents. So my question is, now that you are stepped fully into the mentor role yourself, what do you hope your mentees will remember among that way that you guide them? And what do you want to be your legacy?
Well, the way I look at it, these 7 years that residents devote to their training are the most formative of their whole lives. And the outcome of that 7-year period makes or breaks them. You know, they can be confident surgeons doing the toughest cases in the country or the world and really leading and contributing to the field. Or they could be timid and fearful and scared and do simple cases that amount to nothing and a life poorly spent. And I want to make these trainees of mine into the real giants and the real leaders of the next generation. And so, you know, what I want is to be one of those factors when they look back and say, yeah, I got to train with Lawton. I felt like he molded me into the kind of surgeon I want to be, and that I wouldn't have been the same if it weren't for him. And that's that to me is what I shoot for. Every year I write my graduation speech, and I think about the people that I've trained and graduated, and I ask myself, have I done enough? Are they the kind of people that I'm proud of? Are they the kind of people that they wanted to be? And you know, I think that's really the litmus test. If I had those moments that really pick them up when they were down, help them change or steer their career in the right direction, then I think my job is done. You know, I had a resident this week who had an aneurysm. He ruptured an aneurysm on the dissection, and I could tell he was just devastated by it. And you know, those are the kinds of moments as a mentor where you have to, like, first of all, rescue and get them out of trouble in the operating room, but also help the psyche and make sure that they react in the right way and strengthen them and not weaken them. And you know, that's what I think is the challenge as a mentor, is to be there when those precious moments come up, just as you are with the child of your own as a father, and help them stand, help them walk, help them be strong.
Thank you.
Doctor, there's this saying, they say Rome wasn't built in a day. When you transitioned from UCSF to Barrow, and I would love to know on this transition, how did you go about building the kind of team Barrow has and the culture, and that could bring that vision to life in terms of the books, the publications, all the branding, everything seems to be high quality and all thought. And I'd like to hear from you, how did you develop that translational high quality in everything you do?
Well, I think it's a cumulative thing. There's so much of what you're calling building that started long before I came to Barrow. I was really turned on to operating. I was really turned on to publishing. I was doing research. So a lot of the fundamentals were there. When I got here, I just was able to use the tools and the resources that are here to really heighten the brand, to pull in the things here that are special, and take it to another level. Like I could never have done 7 series at UCSF. 7 series is a lot of work, maintaining all the video and the editing and the artwork that goes alongside it. But here, it's just a matter of pulling things together, leaning on the people that are so talented around me, and stitching this all together in a way that's coherent and positive and educational, helpful. I like to do that because I think if you are truly a builder, it's a combination of your own creative expression, which feels good, and it's a matter of capitalizing on resources that are just sitting there, and you kind of weave those together, and it's a wonderful mix. It's a great thing to introduce something new into the world, whether you're an entrepreneur or putting together 7 series. It's fun to be creative, to produce something novel, and find a way or see that it connects with your audience. I go to meetings now, and I have people that just want to come up to me out of the blue and say thank you for doing the videos, because I watch them every time they come out, and they help me as a surgeon, and they saved a patient or whatever their story is, and it's wonderful. It's powerful.
And I love Peter Lawrence's work. It's great to see not only the videos that are high quality, you post it with a great frequency, but also Peter's work and illustrations. Everything seems to be really well thought and made.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's part of the secret, finding talent and bringing them on the bus, finding ways to tap into that talent, and then making a product that's unique.
And I think that's really awesome. And there's a tweet that you wrote once that I really liked. And you had said, I once thought that the measure of neurosurgical success was case volume and papers published, but it's mentorship. You said you train residents and fellows, develop their skills, coach them, then put them in the game. When they score touchdowns, it means they will continue your legacy of excellence. I think that's really insightful. And I mean, I love the references you make, the anecdotes you make, about making it a game. But did you always feel that way? Did you always think that about being a mentor, or was it more of like a gradual change when you realized that this is that true measure of success?
Yeah, no, that's a change. The metrics that you have, particularly when you're trying to get full professor at UCSF, which is not easy to do, it's not mentorship. Well, it's not that they don't look at that, but they count your publications and your grant funding, and so they're different metrics. So the mentorship thing is beyond that. That's you don't notice that when you're young, because you don't have many people who are you're proof positive. That comes with time, but You're held to a different standard during those years when you're they're counting cases and they're counting publications. And when you get later into your career and you're past full professor and you start seeing your disciples up on the podium giving talks, that's when you really feel it. It's like they are your living, breathing legacy. People aren't going to remember how many thousands of aneurysms I clipped 50 years from now. They're going to remember that Mike Lang and Justin Massatelli and Jan Burkhardt trained with me, and that those guys are out there leading the pack and telling stories now.
And do you foresee the field of neurosurgery changing to realize that more, that neurosurgery is a good marker of success, or do you think that it maybe will kind of stay the way you just explained it in terms of, analyzing candidates?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I thought about this and wrote a little piece about it. I do think that there will be different metrics in the future. Like the old metrics of just publishing are almost becoming archaic because, if I were to ask you four guys how much you read out of the journals today, and you weren't embarrassed about it, you'd probably say not very much. And so what's the value of publishing 1,000 papers if you guys aren't reading it? But if I asked you, are you guys watching 7 series videos or, what's Aaron's thing? Neurosurgical Atlas. If I asked you, are you watching those? You'd probably admit to watching a lot of that stuff. So that means that the people who are producing that material and connecting with all those minds through that medium ought to have some kind of metric that reflects that. So I think the metrics will change. I do think that, if you look at a Kim Kardashian or a George Clooney or whoever, these celebrities who have multiple millions of followers, if a neurosurgeon had that and could connect to an audience and have that kind of an impact, that's a metric worth noting. And I think the field will probably catch up in that way.
And Dr. Lawton, you mentioned measures of success and measures changing over time, even across institutions. You once mentioned that when you're surrounded by excellence, it elevates your own performance. And I guess my question is, what does excellence mean to you today? And how do you intentionally cultivate it in the people that you work with?
Well, I think excellence is just something you know it when you see it. When you have a resident in the operating room who does really great surgery, who has really smooth hands, who makes great decisions, doesn't ever stumble. That's excellence, and that's what you want as a surgeon. You see it in research. Students who produce papers that have really nice ideas and well thought out data and can really prove and articulate their points. That's excellence. And you have it in teachers. There are plenty of residents who teach who create these magnificent 3D videos of petrous bone anatomy or cavernous sinus anatomy, and they know all the detail that goes along with that, and you see it there. So I don't know. I think excellence is something that you just kind of cultivate by setting the standards high, living and breathing it yourself, holding people to that same standard. If I see sloppy surgery or bad research or shortcuts, then I'm not shy about calling people out on it.
Thank you.
So talking also about excellency and global neurosurgery, I was quite impressed with your initiative of Mission Brain. So what motivates you to launch Mission Brain? And how do you think these missions will reflect your philosophy and how will impact in education, equality, equity in like the in across the countries and like on other serve areas as well?
Well, the story of Mission Brain is a story of just personal friendship and affection for Alfredo Quinones. You know, he was a trainee of
Yeah.
mine, and I enjoyed him immensely. And then he left to go be at Hopkins, and I missed him. And so we just decided to do a little thing together, and that evolved into Mission Brain. It started off as a trip to Guadalajara, and
Nice.
we did cases there, and we had a good thing going. And then before we knew it, we were going to the Philippines and to Mexico City, and chapters started forming around the world, and it became a movement. And so sometimes you just don't know. It's just a personal relationship that just explodes. Other times, you know, like I think with Barrow Global, that's a little bit different. We're really keenly interested on seeing what we can do in low and middle income countries like in Tanzania, where we were last week. You know, vascular surgery is a great example of how it's changed dramatically in this country. And it's no longer the primary therapy for aneurysms. And yet, you know, you can't do endovascular surgery in Africa because people can't afford it, and they don't have angiography suites, and they don't have catheters, and all the wherewithal that's necessary. So, you know, it presents an interesting opportunity to kind of go back in time almost, go back to the future, and see if you can take care of the patients in need and meet that unmet surgical need in these other countries through high quality old style surgery, neurosurgery. And that's kind of part of what we're investigating with Barrow Global, is to see what we can do with limited resources in Tanzania with our partners there. And you know, maybe it's a way to keep our open vascular skills, like for aneurysm surgery, alive and well, where there is no other alternative.
Thank you and congratulations for the initiative.
Doctor, as IMG is aspiring to pursue neurosurgery residency in the US, what key qualities or areas should we focus on to stand out and truly prepare ourselves for the challenges of training in the US system?
Yeah, well, if you're asking about how IMGs prepare, it's hard. I think it's an uphill battle. There still are way too many applicants for the spots available, just for American match candidates. So it's particularly hard for IMGs. But we've looked at this. The IMGs tend to work a little harder and be a little bit more productive when it comes to publication and research. And so, you know, I think there are opportunities there to demonstrate prowess, to get a project that's meaningful, that might be of interest to a program that's looking to move in that direction. And I think it's a nice way in. A great example is, you know, Ali Tayebi, he's from Tehran, and he worked with me in San Francisco. I brought him to Barrow when I came here. He got into the match and is finishing up at Rutgers. The guy's written over 100 papers. He's incredibly creative. We just finished a book together. You know, I think these are the kinds of things that you can do. Doesn't necessarily, you don't have to be from an American medical school to be successful in neurosurgery. It just takes, you know, hard work, smarts, and some creativity, and you know, persistence. Sometimes it's not a quick, easy victory. You have to keep slogging away at it.
And how do you see nowadays, at least personally, I see a lot of people going for quantity over quality in terms of the scientific publications. I'd like to hear from you. What are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, it's a really good point. There's no question that there's been an arms race in the paper publication. I think that part of the reason people don't read papers anymore is that there's just too many of them. And I think we could probably stand for fewer papers and higher quality. I think it's probably true that there's only a very small number of papers that get read every year. And so you want to try and go for the quality. I think I would much rather have 1 or 3 papers read by a huge audience every year than, you know, 20 papers or even 50 papers a year that are lesser quality, because, you know, even if you read them, you're going to forget them. But if you write a really meaty, high value paper that sticks, then it's way better. I wrote a paper on basilar artery aneurysms back in 2002. It's about my learning curve and about the lessons that I took away from my first series of patients. And, you know, that paper was one of a very few number that I wrote that year. It was one of my first papers as an attending. And that stuck. Like, that was a really good paper, and people still talk about that paper. And I'd much rather have a bunch of those than, you know, hundreds of others that are forgettable.
Yeah, I think as IMG applicants, sometimes we are afraid of not having the quantity to, I don't know, impress in the first impression. But I mean, of course, we have to check for citations and high quality publications. With whom are you publishing? How do you see the balance in terms of first authorships and clinical trials involvement and so on?
Well, the first authorship is important. Clinical trials are becoming the way to do science now. It's really hard to do small personal surgical series papers. Those don't always fare well in the review process. And if you can do well-designed clinical trials, get an acronym out of it, you know, that's a way better way to go. Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a mix. You know, you if you can get onto 1 or 2 of those, but also have a handful of those easy papers, those small case series, or that novel technique. You know, you just want to try and blend it all together. And I would say that if you break down my CV, that's kind of what I've done. I've got a smattering of all kinds of things in there, and there's no one particular type that does it all. You just have to you know, chase the ideas and see what you come up with.
Thank you.
So, Dr. Lawton, I had a question. You know, we're talking about this application process, and you know, we focus a lot on mentorship. So, for medical students, for those that are getting ready to apply for residency, do you have any advice on, you know, how we can effectively approach networking, especially when we might not have ties to or have strong institutional ties or connections? Just want to maybe kind of your thoughts or maybe your advice that you have on that, since I
Yeah,
think
well,
that does affect a lot.
yeah, I think networking is important. I can't tell you how many times during match season I get a text from a neurosurgeon from wherever saying, "Oh, you got to take a look at so and so. He's interviewing next week at your place," or he did this or that with me, and here's what I have to say about it. You know, those little kudos go a long way, because at the end of the day, we get a pile that's literally tens or sometimes more than 100 really amazing applicants. And the thing that stands out isn't like whether you published 68 papers or 42 papers. It's, you know, that so-and-so who you happen to know put in a good word. And so if you have those network connections through your faculty there where you're in medical school or other contacts, then by all means you should use them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lawton. We have a few questions from the Q&A. Akshay Som has asked, he said, "Hello, Dr. Lawton, thank you for your time. Would you be willing to share some moments from your recent trip to Tanzania, as well as any lessons or recommendations you might have for medical students I will just expand this question, maybe your experience with the Barrow Global initiative in general. What lessons have you taken from that? How has your experience been?
Yeah, well, I would say that the experience of going to another country and trying to do there what we do here is incredibly valuable. It's a lot harder to do. You can't rely on the same kinds of technologies or instruments and so forth. So it's really challenging to do this in general. So you learn a lot in the process. But I think more importantly, it's just when you get out of our medical system, which is so bureaucratic and impersonal and just layered, you get into an environment where it's just really simple and really raw. So, these patients come in Tanzania and they've got horrible tumors that we're told that they were inoperable and they've been waiting for you to get there. And you see the family and you get to meet the patient, and it's just it's really touching. They can only afford so much. So if they can't afford to pay for an aneurysm clip or a particular bipolar or whatever, you don't have that as part of your instrument setup, and you get really connected to the actual operation and the family and their personal situation, and it's refreshing because I don't know, there are plenty of times in our system where you just don't feel connected to your patient in the same way. They come with an insurance plan. You're haggling with insurance personnel. You're not really dealing with the patient. All of that stuff gets kind of placed in this awkward, extraneous place, and it's a distraction. Whereas in a place like Tanzania, it's very connected, and it feels good. You feel like you owe it to that person to give them your best. You owe it to them to make good on what they've put on the table, not only in terms of their life, but their finances. And it's just good. It's a really affirming experience that I think everybody needs to experience.
Thank you, Dr. Lawton. Also, we have another question here from Besonara Laura. Dr. Lawton, thank you so much for being online, and I hope that Trip Africa was amazing for you. In choosing a mentor, what is the most important thing to assess, if you can sum it all in one?
Well, I don't know. I think you want to try and meet as many people that could be mentors as possible. And not everybody's going to be a good mentor. So it's kind of like dating, you want to spread yourself out there and see who's out there and how you react to them. And the good ones will form that special bond. They'll show an interest in you. You'll have a respect and a real interest in them. And I think, there's really no magic to that. It's the same as any relationship. If you feel like it's a positive one that's nurturing you and is helping you be better as a person or as a surgeon, then it will grow. And you just want to find those relationships that make you feel like you're growing and see how far you can push it. If it just keeps giving, then you keep chasing it. And I think that's the best way to do it. There are limits to what mentorship relations will do for you. And, I think when you find relationships that are limited or limiting, then, that's not the right one for you. And you got to focus on the others or keep looking for more.
That's correct. First of all, it was our distinct pleasure to having you here, Dr. Lawton. Only we have one last question to close this interview. So when you think about your greatest legacy, do you see it in books, your operation, or the people you have trained, or even your patients, right? What do you hope people will say about you 50 years from now in neurosurgery textbooks or in the middle of the residence hallway? What do you expect?
Well, to be honest, I've seen this over and over again. Great neurosurgeons get to the end of their career and they're forgotten very quickly. So I think that the takeaway is that you enjoy the ride while you're in the hot seat, and you don't really have any expectations for after. If there's one thing that I would like, I've always wanted this. I've always loved eponyms, and if there's a triangle or a tubercle or a something or other that bears my name, I will be a happy man.
That's very, very interesting. Thank you so much from the Mental School team. We really appreciate your time, and thank you for the audience.
Thanks for having me. Good luck with your continuing series.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lawton.
You too.